please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and welcome to the CNBC TV18 special. I'm Shireen Bhan and we are in conversation for his first full-fledged interview after taking over as Minister of Commerce, Suresh Prabhu. Sir, thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV18. If I can start by talking to you about the GST, sir, because on the 10th the GST Council met. It was virtually a mini budget with a significant rate revision being undertaken by the GST Council. The view now is that we're moving towards the collapsing of the 28% slab with the 18% slab. Industries like cement, paint, etc. have probably already reached out to you seeking redressal. They want to be in the 18% slab. They're still in the 28% slab. Given the revenue implications, do you believe that they should still have any hope of a rate revision, sir?
You must look at GST as a real game changer for India. Try to understand one thing very interestingly. Is the Income Tax Act was made in 1961. Despite the fact that it is there for almost 56 years, how many times we amended that act? So that means that despite the fact that the act is there in a statute book for so many years, despite that we needed amendments because we realized something or other. So GST is not even 6 months old. So I think what we really need to do is to understand the implications, etc. So there are two elements to it. One is the rate of tax.
Yes.
There is a regime of tax. As far as exports are concerned, I must thank Mr. Arun Jaitley and thanks to our Prime Minister and also the GST Council. We have been able to bring in a radical change in the way the taxes are collected, or rather IGST, etc. done. So these are very significant changes. So one is the regime change in terms of exporters, how they really need to pay, how they need to address it. Because there was a problem for exporters was that their working capital was getting blocked.
Has that been rectified? So the refund process has just about started. Our last conversation with FIO seemed to suggest that there was a sum to the tune of 65,000 crores that was blocked by way of working capital. What is the feedback that you're now getting now that the refund process has started?
See, we took up that issue and I'm really thankful to the Finance Minister for being so responsive. Immediately they acted, I think 8th October, they took the corrective steps. It has been significantly improved. See, that's what I was saying, that something or other will keep coming. The important thing is the responsiveness of the government.
Right.
Have you ever responded to any complaint, any ideas that are emanating from the industry so quickly? That's why I was giving example of Income Tax Act. 61, so many amendments. So despite that, GST being so young in terms of just 6 months old, despite that we are working on so many changes. That shows the attitude of the government, the approach of the government to business and industry, and to make sure that the life of taxpayer is really made easy. That's the whole purpose of doing this.
Right.
And simple.
So let me just talk to you about exports, sir, because the number for the month of September was very encouraging. In fact, we saw an almost 25% growth in exports year on year. The question now is this sustainable? What is the feedback that you're getting, sir? We should be, about a couple of days away from getting the latest export numbers. But give me a sense of what you are picking up.
This is something, as you know, the export means somebody has to buy for you. Otherwise, you cannot export. So the buyer also, there should be a demand in that respective market for the buyer. But luckily, we have been seeing really good signs. It's too early, but still good signs of market now becoming better. So it's not just one commodity across the board. 10 commodities are actually, if you take all 10 export items that we export, not just commodities, they are showing some good sign, including engineering exports. So I think that's something very good sign. But I think we really need to work on it. But we have created a strategy which I'm sure you'll ask me, so I'll give that answer a little later. But we are seeing a good, encouraging sign of showing an upward trend in exports, and we like to maintain it, so we are also taking a number of steps to make that
But
happen.
you think this 25% kind of growth number is
I
going to be sustainable?
I don't think 25% is the right...
So what should be factored in?
That will wait for some more time to come, because, there's no point just giving the numbers, because if you recall, we had given some numbers earlier which were nowhere near that. So I think we'll wait for some time to actually assess the situation on the ground, come out with a trend. But this, as if you ask me, the trend is too early to judge, but at the same time, it is definitely showing upward trend. That's what I can say for the time being. What percentage, etc., wait for a few months to go so that we'll really know.
So what is the strategy that you're working on?
We are working out on exports in a very significant way, because we realize this is the biggest driver for growth, this is the biggest employment generator, and this is also the backbone for even large industries to grow. Because when exporters, small little exporters, they contribute for domestic market as well as export. So what we are doing is, we are doing 2-3 things. One is first support all the top 10 items that we export. So we'll do that completely. I had a detailed meeting with all export promotion organization and we have understood the problem. We are trying to take corrective steps for that. Number 2, try to identify new items for exports. And therefore that is a process which is on. So we'll tell you very soon as we identify which is that new item we can export. That's one on the what can be exported. Second is where can we export. There again our strategy is very simple. I went to Latin America, Cuba, Panama. Why? Because in the geographies like that, there is a tremendous scope. So talking about only 10 top markets of India, where we are already doing well, where we already got a relationship, we'll protect those markets. But not that's enough. We need to explore new markets. Otherwise, the saturation will come after some time and we're not going to grow market. So what we are identifying is the countries where even small little share of exports can significantly aggregating to all the exports will be significantly higher. So we are working on that, number 1. Number 2, also we are trying to find out service exports. See, which is something which has never happened before. So we are not happened in a sense on the scale. So not just IT. We are going into different kinds of services. We are identifying those services like home care service, which also is a great potential. So we are working on that. Thirdly, we are doing is countries where India has invested a lot of political capital, where we have invested even human resource capital, geopolitical capital over a period of time, strategic capital. But so the relationship between those countries is very high in terms of geopolitical relationship. But economic relationship is so low. They are the right candidates for engaging with them for developing economic relationship because their receptivity will be very high because we already have the relationship, they already accept our partnership. So we'll take that relationship forward. So we are working on both geography strategy. We are working on both product strategy as well as working on non-good strategy.
So a new foreign trade policy on the anvil, sir?
Sorry?
A new foreign trade policy on the anvil?
That we are actually going to have a review of that. In the review, we'll give a proper strategy with some of the points that I mentioned and also more. The idea would be that we'll create a strategy, we'll support the industry with doing that. We leave it to the industry to actually make that happen. So all the export promotion councils, FIO for example, is actually working with us very closely. We are creating like a market strategy. You'll be surprised we are doing something like a businessman. When he exports something, he prepares his business plan. But for Export Promotion Council, also you must prepare the same business plan. So I have told them to prepare a business plan for each Export Promotion Council. FIO is doing a market research for each country. For example, just now I had a talk with Canadians. So I said, we are happy that our relationship is growing. I said that relationship is growing compared to your historical numbers. What about the potential? Canada, being one of the G7 countries, has a huge potential to grow. We are potential-wise, we may be still very far from realizing it. So I think we are working on both to prepare a strategy as well.
Sir, since we're talking about strategy for exports, let me also ask you about the strategy as far, or the thinking as far as the rupee is concerned. Today at 65.43 at a 1-month low. I know that there is divided opinion even within government and outside of it as well on whether it is overvalued, how should we address the rupee. What is your own thinking on this, sir?
See, I cannot have my own thinking which...
okay, what is the government's thinking then? Let me ask you what the government's thinking is.
The government thinking, and that's something which I leave it to the finance minister. But I will just talk theoretically, is that weaker currency always helps the exports. And therefore, if interest rates are low, if the currency is low, will help the exports. But I'm sure finance minister is seized of this matter. Prime minister is certainly concerned about increasing exports of India. So they will be able to tell you exactly how it should be. But really speaking, India is now poised for growth, for sure. So many structural changes that have happened, including GST, including demonetization, which has happened in the country, will help us to put India into higher growth trajectory. Export will be a drivers of growth. And therefore, we are requested, and there is a report which is being prepared by the NITI Aayog on exports and employment. So we are wanting to link exports not just as an economic activity, its potential to encompass in itself the ability of promoting jobs, which is a social issue. So I think socio-economic development can happen in a significant way through the exports.
Let me ask you about crude prices, and given what we are seeing at this point in time with crude prices moving back up closer to $60 plus, in fact 65, how much of a concern is this now for the government? Have you had conversations with the Ministry of Finance, for instance, on this issue?
One is, do you have a control over the international crude prices? So this is something which we accept as a reality. So how do you deal with this volatile market. One, we already have a midterm strategy in place, that is to diversify our energy basket to make it less reliant on fossil fuel, which are largely imported.
Sure.
And therefore, that's one part of a study. Second part of strategy is to actually become more and more energy efficient in terms of use of energy. So for the same activity, you can use less amount of energy. That's second study. Thirdly, if prices go up, we will have to live up to that reality. So how do you work on that? So I think our domestic exploration is also, that is what the ministry is also working on. So I think all that put together, dealing with reality as it is, but also making sure that over a period of time, we'll be able to diversify our energy portfolio in such a way that we'll be less reliant on the imports.
Let me ask you about the point that you just mentioned, that countries where we already have a strong economic partnership as well as political engagement, you would like to further that relationship forward. You've just returned very recently from your first visit as Commerce Minister to the US, sir. And I know the contentious issues that we talk about often were brought up again. From the Indian perspective, the visa issue was brought in. Do you have any hope that there could be some positive breakthrough on that? Because the US sees this as an immigration issue. It doesn't see this as a trade issue necessarily. So should Indian IT have any hope once again as far as the visa issue is concerned? And secondly, the US raises the issue, or US companies, the USTR has raised the issue of price caps. Is there the possibility of some sort of review? Is there a thinking on trying to get all stakeholders involved to address this issue?
See, from issues from our side with the US, firstly, I must tell you that despite the fact that there has been a lot of voices emanating from the new administration about the trade relationship with several countries, including India, the talks were extremely cordial and extremely good, including the statement made by the Commerce Secretary when I met him, is that we don't want to reduce the trade deficit by reducing exports from India, but by exporting more to India. That's very, very positive comment, and we welcome it. Number two, on the visa side, we have explained to the US that Indians coming to US has helped the US economy significantly. Just one class of people who go to US is the students, that has also helped the economy. Second class of people who have gone there as the professionals have naturalized there, that has helped US economy, because if you look at the ethnic group, Indian ethnicity group is one of the highest earners in terms of professional category, so that has helped. Thirdly, are these people who go there and for short duration, like the US visa. So we said this is actually going to hurt the US economy over a period of time, because this has helped them. I'll tell you something very interestingly. Alan Greenspan, when the former chairman of the Fed, had made a very interesting statement once. He said the US economy's expansion, which was unprecedented, which happened for a long time, was also on account of productivity gains. Where the productivity gain comes from, among many other things, is also the use of communication information technology into the US economy. And one of the contributors, I'm not saying the only contributor, is India. So therefore, it is actually helping the US economy. So we explained to them properly. They also heard very patiently. So I hope they'll be working on that. On the other side, from the US side, of course, on the Indian side, we have made some progress on export of grapes, export of mangoes. We have been very positive on doing that. On the US side, this price cap was one of the issues that they raised. We explained to them that we have a NPPA on the Indian side which looks into these issues. So we said we'll pass on their concern to the NPPA. We are going to also have the meeting of the US companies who are raising these issues with their relevant authorities in India. So we are working on that.
Okay, you're working on that. One of the other issues, and you said that the US Commerce Secretary raised the issue of the trade deficit. Did they also specifically raise the tariff issue, sir? Because President Trump, in a few of his speeches, has called out, not specifically India once or twice, but the issue of high tariffs in countries where the US does business with. He has raised that issue. I mean, a Harley example is one example, for instance.
So, in fact, as I told you, to be very precise, his idea was that to any country which has a trade deficit with other country will always raise the issue. So we raise the issue with China. And the US has the same issue with China. China has a huge trade deficit with US, India. China has a huge trade deficit with India. But when he said very specifically was that, considering probably our relationship with the Prime Minister as well as the President of US, is that we like to export more to India. And therefore on export, we'll definitely work with US.
Okay. Let me then ask you, sir, about what we can expect in terms of future action. There is a new industrial policy that's in the works at this point in time. How soon can we expect an announcement on that front? And two, what more can we expect in terms of FDI? I mean, there has been a significant liberalization already of the FDI regime. There are a few items that have been on the table that haven't yet reached a conclusion. For instance, allowing non-food retail as part of the food retail policy. How soon can we expect further movement on the FDI related matters and also the new industrial policy?
See, you're absolutely right. On the industrial policy, the broad idea is to remove all the regulations. So I already set up a committee under the chairmanship of Secretary DIPP to review all the regulation so that we reduce as much regulation as possible. Number two, our idea is to take ease of doing business to the next level, maybe in the top 50 over a period of time. It will not happen in a hurry. But that's the target. We'll take it on that. Thirdly, in the industrial policy, we must identify 6 or 7 or 5 or 6 new emerging industries. So you talk about an iceberg, we see 1/3, you don't see the 2/3. So at least 1/3 you can see. But it is not even iceberg policy, but something which you don't see today, but which is going to emerge tomorrow. So how do you identify those sectors today and take them forward while protecting your existing industries? So we should not abandon the total industry and try to go run for a new industry. So this is going to be the thrust of industrial policy, is to encourage investments into sectors which we'll identify. And we are already working with top global experts to identify such sectors which will find a place into this policy. Also, the present policy which needs modernization, present industry which needs modernization. If you don't do that, they will die natural death over a period of time, like the textile industry in Mumbai, in Ahmedabad. It was called the Manchester of the East, but they didn't modernize. So I think we should try to protect that. So then, of course, we are going to have a wider consultation. I'm sure all of you can offer advice so that we'll take it forward. On the FDI, there are two elements to FDI. One is the policy. Remove sectoral caps, allowing FDI into various sectors. That's one part of the policy which has been done. The sector is getting actual FDI into projects. So that is more important. So enabler was changing the policy. The reality would be when the investments come to the sectors. And so therefore now we are doing country by country analysis. Just now we had a very interesting discussion with the Canadian minister, and he is fully committed to bring more investments into India. We had a similar roadshow in Stockholm, wherein first time Make in India event was organized outside the country. There again we had an overwhelming response. We are working with various we are identifying certain countries from where the FDI can come.
So what is the target, sir, then as far as the FDI? I mean, we've had a good track record for the past year at a record high. What is it that you're targeting now, sir?
Target means I would rather feel as much as possible. That's the target. And therefore, what we are doing is also the companies. See, one is a country, but countries don't invest unless it's a socialist country which is centrally command economy. So companies invest. So we are actually now talking to company CEOs. In fact, not all, but most of the Fortune 500 companies, we want to establish one-on-one relationship with them. So we increase the comfort level when they are to make investment to India. We should provide them that support. Because basically, investment is also a real decision in terms of putting money. But what precedes that, actually putting money, is a psychology. So are you comfortable by putting investments to this country? Are you happy doing business in this environment? So to increase that comfort level, to bring in more of sensitivity in terms of making that investment will be safe, will be properly rewarded over a period of time, we are actually going to develop that one-on-one relationship with the country. So that's what we are doing. Additionally, I must tell you something very interesting is we are identifying certain products, which I told you about the new industry as well as the old industry, where we think significant investment can help India to increase the share into manufacturing. So the whole idea is that now we must link all the programs. See, the Prime Minister, when he kept announcing various schemes, he had a complete big picture in mind. If India has to be doubling the size of economy in the next few years' time, when India is going to be the third largest economy of the world, we must have everything in place, because managing a $5 trillion economy is not something which is going to be done with the same tool that we have today. So he talked about Make in India, he talked about ease of doing business in India, he talked about Startup India. So what we are doing is linking all this into one. So that's what even it will partly reflect in the industrial policy, partly also interested into something else. For example, ease of doing business is one very good accepted idea globally. World Bank does that ranking. We are also working on ease of trading. why not we make one common platform for export activities in which many ministries have to come on board, including Customs Department. But we have to work with that. But our idea is that we are trying to develop that DGFT. I have directed them to work on that so that over a period of time.
So you replace DGFT with a new body?
In a sense, they are the ones who are currently doing it. So the ministry will do it.
Yeah.
But because DGFT has the data, DGFT has the wherewithal of doing it. So they will take top consultant, and because they have the information. See, basically, whenever you want to automate something like this, wherever you want to put on a digital platform like this, you need physical information available. So that's available with them.
So then let me ask you, because you said that you feel confident about where the economy is today. New projects in the second quarter down 64%. The fall was largely due to an 83% fall in private new project announcements. CapEx levels have fallen to almost 1/3 of FY11 CapEx. The gross capital formation, though, we have seen an uptick. We grew at about 1.6% in the second quarter, but for 5 straight quarters we had seen a fall. Do you believe that we are now on the cusp of seeing momentum picking up from here on?
Yeah, absolutely. There's undoubtedly. In fact, there are many things happening which do not capture the attention as much as it should be. For example, the deleveraging of Indian business has started in a big way. See, the companies, if they don't deleverage, then there is no ability for them to borrow more or to invest more. See, one of the challenges that private sector investment in India has not increased significantly for various reasons. But one of the reasons is the high leveraging of those companies. If the deleveraging has started already, that means banks are getting better off, because deleveraging means they will be repaying the loans and therefore they will be doing. Also, that means the ability of the companies to borrow increases, because every company can borrow only limited amount. There's the borrowing power decided by their articles of association, but also by the prudential norms of the banking system. So if the deleveraging is happening, that means more and more investment will come into the private sector in the next few years. Secondly, the industrial production, which is also showing sign of revival. The core sector growth is showing signs of revival. Consumption is also increasing. The tax revenues, both direct tax, personal tax, as well as corporate tax, are showing increase. When only you will have revenue increasing, only when you earn more, that's why you are putting in more. If the corporates are earning more, obviously their ability to invest also will increase. So I think all these are very good signs. The consumption, investment, and also the public investment also has gone up significantly. As you know yourself, the railways, for example, almost first 3 years of this current government, Prime Minister Modi's government, is 3,75,000 crores is a committed investment, as opposed to 4 lakh crores, which the previous 70 years of government had put in. So public investment is rising, private sector investment is showing signs of revival, deleveraging is happening, consumption is increasing, savings rate in economy is increasing. So that's a very, very good sign, because unless you have savings, how will you make the investment? On the other side, international interest in India is growing, so FDI is increasing. So I would consider inflation, which is still manageable. So I think these are all very good, strong fundamentals of economy, which will propel India into a different growth trajectory. I think the new normal will emerge when India will grow at an even faster rate.
Sir, since you talked about savings, let me very quickly ask you about whether you're also working on reforms related to gold. I believe that this is a matter that the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council is also looking at. Has there been any conversation within the Commerce Ministry on gold, sir, on gold-related reforms?
See, gold.
Yeah.
See, whether we like it or not, India's appetite for gold is insatiable. How much gold you buy, they will be there. So one is gold bonds were issued so that people don't have to invest. But there is certain amount of gold that will be used in India is for actual, I'll not call it consumption, but in a sense, because gold cannot be literally consumed, but consumed. Like for example, some woman would like to wear it at the time of wedding, so she's not going to wear a gold bond. So she wants her to have that. So I think there is certain element of gold is bound to be used. So what we have to work on is convince the people, change the mindset that investment in gold, if you put the same money into some financial instrument, that of course saving is saving. Where it goes into metal, it's a saving. It goes into housing, it goes a saving. It goes into capital market, it's a saving, or you keep it in the bank, it's a saving. But if you can put into financial saving, the circulation happens in a bigger way. So that's a matter of changing the mindset to the people and try to convince them.
I believe there's also a proposal to merge MMTC and STC, sir. How soon can we expect that to happen?
That's something which is on the card, which is actually the cabinet has to take a decision. But I think both will benefit from this merger.
Merger and then divestment, is that a possibility as well?
That's something which I cannot tell you today, but definitely that's something which the cabinet has to take a call, but that's something which has been discussed for a while now.
So we've got a WTO meeting coming up. Are we likely to see, do you believe, any forward movement on the WTO agenda, specifically when it comes to agri-subsidies? And do you believe there could be additions to the WTO agenda this time around?
You know, one is, first of all, we just had a mini ministerial before the WTO. They did it for the first time probably because last time they had little difficulties in arriving at a consensus later on. So they did in Marrakesh, which I attended with 30-40 other ministers from different countries, which the WTO Secretariat had chosen. We had a very good dialogue. We have put forward our concern. One is on public stockholding. We said we will not agree on any condition which will put any restrictive clauses on India. Number two, we are very keen on market access to agriculture products in the developing countries so that they should reduce subsidies. We also said that we should not keep raising new issues in WTO forum unless we resolve the other issues. We are very keen that a Doha development agenda should not be just abandoned, we should be taken forward. And most importantly, which is something which is so important for not only India but all the developing countries, is that multilateralism must prevail. There is some talk that what is the use of WTO. So we feel strongly, no, WTO can be reformed, definitely. WTO rules can be amended for sure. But WTO as an institution, multilateral platform for discussing trade issues cannot be just be wished away with or abandoned. So therefore, we are very keen that multilateralism prevails. Knowing from the ministers as well as the undertones, what is happening, I don't think we should expect miracle in Buenos Aires. At the same time, what is most important many times is to protect your own position, which we'll do very strongly. Our Prime Minister is certainly very keen to ensure that sovereignty of India lies in the fact that we protect the interest of each and every citizen of India. So whether it is farmers, whether it is small traders, whether it is agriculture as a sector or whether it is trade and services sector, we'll definitely try to protect that, and therefore we'll go forward.
Let me end then by asking you, sir, we're almost in that phase where the countdown to the union budget has started. Of course, because of the GST, a lot of the indirect tax action has moved to the level of the GST Council. But what would your key recommendations be for the Union Finance Minister, and what would your priorities be now, sir, as we end this calendar year and start the new year?
I'll be very happy, and therefore I'm going to take up with the Finance Minister, is that we must promote exports in India in a significant way. What you give to export is really not a subsidy, it's an investment, because that promotes a strategic interest. See, when you export something outside India, you also develop some economic relationship in that particular country. That builds up bridges with that particular country. It helps domestic economy significantly. So I will be very happy, and I'll be requesting the Finance Minister that try to do as much as possible for the exports.
Specific requests, sir? What would the specific interventions be that you would like?
I can tell the Finance Minister, because if you can consider my request, I will tell you. But the request will be considered by the Finance Minister, so I'll have to talk to him.
Just to give us an understanding of what the thinking is.
I will tell it to the Finance Minister. When he announces it, you will know what was the specific request. I'm sure he will announce it in the budget. But I am just saying is, as a strategy, India must promote exports in a very significant way. It has a great multiplier on economy. It has a great advantage, and also another thing which we must very clearly appreciate. When we export something, who is manufacturing it? We are manufacturing in India, and we are exporting means the market there is accepting your product. Automatically, you are benchmarking your production capacity and quality to global standards.
Right.
So by exporting, you are actually helping upgrading India's capability of manufacturing. So I think, I'm sure Finance Minister will do it, and of course I'm sure CNBC will break the news when Finance Minister announces it.
So exports will be the #1 priority. Mr. Prabhu, many thanks for joining us here. So always a pleasure to speak with you, and thanks very much for giving us a sense of what we can expect from the Ministry of Commerce.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
With that, it is time for us to wrap up this CNBC TV18 special from all of us here. Goodbye. Many thanks for watching.